officially start now. So yeah, very warm welcome to everyone. Lovely to see you here. My name is Vidyadaka, and I will talk for a while on why meditate. That's what I'll talk about, and hopefully I'll leave enough time for you to ask questions if you want to ask questions at the end. So yeah, that's the plan, and people will come and go as I talk, but that's fine, and yeah, I'll see what happens. So I thought I'd just start by telling you a story. It's just a story that I read relatively recently. It's just a children's story. Well, just a children's story. I mean, stories are stories, aren't they? And anyway, it was in what's called a children's book, and it was called something like "The Age of Blueness and Other Predicaments," something like that. I can't remember who it was by. Anyway, short children's book. Apparently, I had it when I was much younger than I am now, but I can't remember it. But I was just reading it a few weeks ago, came across it, and I was really moved by it. So I'll just outline the story, and I hope that will provide the basis for the talk, basically. Okay, so the start of the story is we're set in this town, and it's a very busy town, as most towns are. Come on in. And it's like a normal town, just like we're used to. People coming and going. Come on in if you want. Just pause a second. Spaces down here. Well, it's getting a bit full. A couple more, yeah. Okay. Okay, good. So traditionally you're supposed to say, is everyone sitting comfortably? So I hope you're all sitting comfortably, and I'll tell you a story. So we start in this town, and it's a normal sort of town, very busy, people in the marketplace and a port and various things. But it's an unusual town because everything is grey. There isn't any colour. So it's like a completely normal town that we're used to, but there's no colour, completely grey. Obviously, gradations of grey, but there is a bit of white and there's a little bit of black, but mostly it's just grey. So no one knows about colour, they don't know what it is. And but they've got this feeling, everyone in the town just has this feeling of sort of like discontent or something, like something not quite right. They don't know what it is. Daily life is carrying on as it always does, but something's not quite right, and most people have got a feeling for that, like something maybe even a bit dissatisfying, but they can't quite put their finger on it. They can't quite work out what it is. But in the middle of the town, there's this wizard, and he lives alone in a house in the middle of the town. And he being a wizard, he kind of picks up on the atmosphere, and he knows that people are a bit disgruntled. He doesn't really know what the solution is either. But anyway, what he does is he goes down these big flight of steps into his cellar, the dark cellar. And he's just got loads of bits and bobs down there and different wizardry chemicals. And he just starts mixing things together, exploring and finding out, I don't know, if he can create some sort of solution or some sort of something to help. And he's mixing some of his things around, and suddenly he creates blue. no one's ever seen blue before because they only live in a grey world. But he suddenly, somehow magically, discovered this thing that he calls blue, and he's just got a pot of blue, and he thinks, well, maybe this will help. I've never seen it before. It's miraculous. So he makes more of it and goes up, and people see it and they want it, and they. He gives it away freely, and everyone paints their houses blue and their doors blue and their clothes blue, and they paint the sky blue and the sea blue and the bees blue. Everything they paint blue. It's miraculous. They've only ever seen grey. They don't even know what it is. It's just this different experience. And so initially that's really, really good. Everyone's really, really happy. But they now live in a completely blue world. There's no grey left. It's completely blue. And that's fine. But then after a while, they start getting a bit melancholic and a little bit slightly depressed and down about something. They can't quite work out what it is. Anyway, the wizard, of course, picks up on this, and he goes down into his cellar and starts mixing a few chemicals or whatever it is, magic spells. And in his cauldron, he creates this thing that is yellow. We know it as yellow. He's never seen it before in his life. He doesn't really know what it is. But he thinks it might help. So he makes lots of it, goes upstairs, shows it to the people, and they really love it. It's so beautiful compared to the blue. And so he gives it away freely. He's very happy to do what he can to help. And all the people use the yellow, and they paint everything yellow. They paint their gates yellow, their cars yellow, their flowers they paint yellow, they paint the sun yellow, and they paint the boats yellow, and they paint the grass yellow. They paint everything yellow. And for a while that's great. They really, really love it. They're really happy. Everything's bright and vibrant. They love whatever this is called yellow. But after a while, of course, they get a bit anxious and a bit overstimulated. Everything's a bit too bright. They're feeling a bit like on edge. The wizard's like, something's not quite right here. People are complaining. They're too stressed out. So down he goes again into the cellar, mixes some whatever they are, and discovers red. He's never seen red before. He thinks it'll help. Up he goes again into the world, gives it away freely, and of course everyone in the town paints everything red. The bees red, the birds red, the trees red, the food red, the clouds red, the sun red, each other red, everything's red. And they love it. And they just think this is fantastic. But after a while they just start getting angry and irritable. And they don't really know why, but they just feel quite quick to criticise and get irritated with each other and start having fights. And the wizard, of course, sees, well, this isn't quite right. So he goes down into his basement, again into his cellar, and he just starts mixing things together, and he tries mixing these new things that he's created together, and suddenly he realises that he can make thousands and thousands of different colours. So he makes all these different colours, browns and greens and purples and tints and all of that. So he makes loads and loads of colours. He goes up, takes them all up and just gives them away to everyone. And people love it. And so they paint lots of things. They paint birds kind of brownish, and they paint like the grass green, and they paint the sky blue and the sun yellow, and they paint their cars red and their houses kind of like brick colour or whatever. And they love it. And of course it makes people very, very content because they feel they can see something that they've never seen before, and it's very, very satisfying. They feel very, very satisfied and content. And the wizard, of course, is well and truly loved. And of course that's the end of the story. You could say happily ever after, But what they've done is created a world in which they live, in which they can live in a content way. They can see clearly how things are. Okay, lovely story, isn't it? Lovely metaphor, really. So I wanted to use this story as basically an image for the purpose and practice of meditation. So why meditate? That's the question that I want to explore. And I think this story illustrates the why we should meditate, or why people would benefit from meditation. So the Buddha meditated. So that's the first thing to talk about. The Buddha meditated. It wasn't the only thing that he did. He taught the Dharma. He taught what we call Buddhism, although he wouldn't have called it Buddhism. He taught many people. He didn't discriminate about who to teach. The Buddha was born as a human being, just like all of us, but he became a Buddha. The word Buddha means awake. The Buddha woke up from an unenlightened state and became enlightened. And he was able to do that through his own efforts, yes, through his own realization. And one of the tools, you could say, or conditions that he used was meditation. So the Buddha meditated, and of course he encouraged his disciples to meditate. He encourages anyone who wants to learn Buddhist meditation. But he wasn't particularly, he wanted people to try it for themselves and to see if it worked. So one of Buddhism's main things is you try it for yourself. If it works, try it first of all. Try it in your experience and see if it works. So he encouraged his disciples to try meditation and see if it worked. So from the point of view of a Buddha who is enlightened, we don't really know what enlightenment is, but from the point of view of the Buddha, all of us are living in a black and white world, or a grey world. Yeah? From the point of view of an enlightened mind, our minds are like the people in that town, just very grey and not much contrast, and certainly no colour. So it feels to us like we're living in a colourful world, obviously. But from the point of view of an enlightened mind, he can see that through our behaviour and through our views and opinions and beliefs and what we do with our lives, that we're just living in this grey world without any colour. And from the point of view of the Buddha, he can see that we would be much, much happier if we lived in a coloured world. Yeah? You with me so far? Fairly simple, isn't it? So meditation is one means of making that happen. So meditation is basically going into the wizard's cellar, walking down the steps, going into the basement, mixing up things and discovering colour. That's what meditation is. Okay? That's the purpose of meditation. In using this metaphor, it allows you to discover colour. When you discover colour, you can create a very, very different world. Yeah. So then the question is, I suppose, how do we know that we're living in a grey world? Like, what's happening for us if the Buddha would say that we're living in a grey world? Well, the Buddha's one of his primary teachings was about the mind, and that the mind precedes our experience. So everything we experience, according to the Buddha, everything that we experience has already kind of filtered itself through the mind, whatever we call the mind. So our experience arises in dependence upon the state of our mind. And so the Buddha would say, well, if you live in a grey world because the colour of your mind is grey. Yeah, that's what he'd say. The colour of your mind is grey. You need to if you want to live in a different world, you need to change the colour of your mind. And the Buddha I'm paraphrasing a lot and saying, well, the Buddha would say this and Buddha would say that. I haven't got a clue what the Buddha would say. This is just what I think the Buddha might say. So why have we got a grey mind from the enlightened mind's perspective? Well, the Buddha listed 5 qualities of mind that means that we live in a sort of quite a narrow grey space. So the Buddha talked about all of us experience these 5 things 99% of every single day that we're alive. Yeah, unless you try and meditation or other things. There are indirect methods of working on your mind, but I'm just going to talk about meditation. So all of us experience these things. Craving, which is basically I want something that I haven't got. Yeah, that simple thing that we do. You have one experience, but you'd rather have another one. Yeah, you're all familiar with that. And it usually, in this culture, usually comes in the form of shopping, procreation, eating, basically consuming. That's how our culture has kind of manifested that. But that feeling of, I want something else. Yeah, I want another thing that isn't what I've got. That's craving. And of course the other main one is aversion. I don't want this. Yeah, you're having an experience, whatever it is. It might just be a pain in the knee, or it might be a falling out with someone at work, or it might be the state of the world at the moment. Somewhere in your mind you're saying, I don't want it. I want something else. I don't want this. I don't like this. I want this to end. Yeah, you familiar with that? Those 2 trends in the mind. Those are the 2 I really want to talk about, but just to let you know, the others he talked about were anxiety and restlessness. So when you have an anxious mind, yeah, your mind is just anxious about things. Oh, I should have done that. That sort of thing, or anxious about speaking in front of a room of people, or anxious about giving a presentation, or anxious about catching an aeroplane, or we can get anxious about billions of things. So that's another state. The other state is basically sloth. It's the opposite of anxiety. So it's like just really low energy. I can't be bothered. I don't want to be bothered. I'm just knackered and I just don't want to do anything. It's that sort of attitude. Often happens on a Sunday, although you're not suffering from that at the moment. But that sort of attitude. And then the other one is doubt. Yeah, just doubt. I don't really know what I really want to do with my life. In fact, I'm not really sure what I want to do. That sort of thing, which can play out in all sorts of indecisions, both in terms of our life and what we're doing with our life in a big scale, but also just, you know what, I don't know whether to have a flat white today or a long black. Just minor indecisions. Okay. So these are the mental states that mean that while we're inhabiting them, we live in a grey world. Okay. So so I just really want to talk about the craving and aversion, because in a way they're probably the strongest and most familiar. They're like the primary states. And the Buddha's basically saying, look, you don't have to live with those states of mind. You just don't have to do it. I know they're really, really addictive, and I know they go on a lot of the time, but you don't have to do it. Yeah, there is another way of living. You don't need to live in this grey world. So craving is, like I was saying, it's wanting something that you haven't got. And I was just noticing this yesterday. I didn't have anything particular to do yesterday, and I ended up going on this walk, which is from Shoreditch to the river. It was like a lead walk. Anyway, I did that, And then I was walking back to the London Buddhist Centre, and of course there were loads of, nice shops open and stuff. And in my mind I was thinking, oh, there must be something I want. I had £20 in my pocket, and I kept planning in my mind as I was walking along the sorts of shops I was passing. Like, oh yeah, I know there's a bookshop down that street, so maybe I walk down there and I can have a browse in the bookshop. And then, oh yeah, I do need a hat, so I'll go that way. So my whole route was dictated by this kind of mild craving of something I felt I wanted, but I didn't know quite what it was. Anyway, I was vaguely aware of that, but then I got stopped on the street by a woman from Centrepoint who was asking for standing orders and to sign up. And of course, my immediate response was, no, I've got things to do, I've got books to buy, I've got hats to buy. I haven't got time to listen to you. But I was aware enough to okay, I'll just say hello and be friendly and stuff. So we started talking, and she was telling me about the work that Centrepoint do for young homeless people. And I could feel the aversion in me. I could feel myself just wanting to pull away and oh no, I don't want to know about this. I just don't want to know about all this. I just want to get my book. But I had enough awareness just to okay, just give her your attention. I just Vidyadaka, just give her your attention. It's not, it's not going to take long. And I listened to her. And I looked her in the eye, and I sort of opened my heart, and I just listened to what she had to say. And what she had to say, of course, really touched me. I was very moved by what she was doing. And then by the end, I gladly signed in a standing order form, and she was obviously very grateful. I was very grateful that she'd been there and taken the time to approach me, which wouldn't have been easy, etc., etc. So I left feeling really light, really kind of, that was really enjoyable experience, and really pleased, and it got me out of the craving, if you see what I mean. I forgot about the book after that. I was I can't be bothered. But of course, craving doesn't factor that in, does it? Craving is just about, me. Craving is about me and how my day is going to go. When I wake up in the morning, I don't think, I'll tell you what, I'll go out today and see if people can approach me for money. It just doesn't work like that. Craving is much more self-centered. So in a way, that was I think the thing is with craving is that it's something that you do with your mind that over-exaggerates the pleasant things of the world, doesn't it? So when you get into craving, you get up in the morning and you sort of unconsciously think how your day is going to go, and it usually includes all the nice bits, oh yeah, I'll go there and then I'll do that, and then I'll meet this person for lunch and have that, and then I'll do that. Yeah? Hopefully I'm not the only one here. Craving accentuates the pleasantness of life, and it kind of shoves the unpleasantness of life away. So then, of course, when you get on the tube and it's really busy, or you're in a queue and you want it to go faster, of course you haven't factored that into your view of the world. All you factored in is, I want this, I want that, and then I'm going to do that. But of course, life isn't like that. There's all sorts of things going on. People are living and dying. Our view of the world when we're in craving isn't big enough. It doesn't include what's actually happening, like other people want things. There's all sorts of things going on in the world. Craving just narrows us down to this me-shaped object going out into the world to get other objects that will fit that me. Yeah. Craving always imagines a world in which there's a me getting things. Yeah, you don't just think of a book, for example, do you? you think of me having a book, don't you? That's how craving works. It's always to do with me, and it's always to do with the world, but the view of the world is extremely narrow and only focuses on the pleasant aspects of the world. Yeah. And of course, aversion is the opposite. When you feel aversion or ill will, it's still all to do with you, but it only focuses on the unpleasant aspects of the world. Yeah. So if someone's in a mood with you, and they've shouted at you or got annoyed with you in a meeting, say, or, it's so addictive, isn't it, to get preoccupied with like what they said, why they said it. Next time I'm going to see them, I'm going to say this, and that'll put an end to it. Yeah? I mean, obviously these are kind of caricatures, but it's like when you get into aversion or ill will, you kind of see the world in a very, very narrow way that only really focuses on the unpleasantness of the situation. And of course, your immediate response is to want that unpleasantness to finish as soon as possible. Okay? So the way that the world appears to us is dependent on the colour of our mind. And usually, you could say the colour of our mind is a shade of grey somewhere between craving and aversion. So of course, our world appears to us like that. Our world arises into our consciousness as a world in which we can get what we want and we can get away from what we don't want. And most people act on that basis for a lot of the time. And you can see that happening both on a microscopic level, i.e., I think that's the right word, in terms of the individual, just individuals acting in that way, or you can see it in the macro. Is that right? The universal. You can see it happening between nations, between states, between groups. So these primary mental states that the Buddha talked about are the reason that we see a world that has no colour in it. It's coloured only by the greyness of craving and the greyness of aversion. And most people behave on the basis of those two forces most of their lives. And it's painful because, you know that aversion is painful. Like when I was stood with this woman, I was like, I could feel the pain in it. Do you know what I mean? I could feel it was a physically painful experience. I just wanted to get away. It wasn't just a cognitive thing. It was a felt experience of, I want this to end. So it's usually easy to notice that about aversion. We usually think that craving is quite pleasant, but that's because we're entranced by the possibility of getting what we want. So the possibility of getting the book, or getting the girl, or getting the man, or getting the whatever it is, the house, or the career, or the life, or the job, we don't notice that whole way of being is painful because we're anticipating the pleasure. We're anticipating the pleasure of, we think we're going to be happy when we get it. And so we don't notice that state of craving is grey, if you see what I mean. But life isn't grey, life is technicolor. But we don't see that because we're caught up. Yeah. The others, of course, anxiety or sloth or doubt, all of those take the colour out of our life. And the Buddha likened being in these states as it's like being in debt. And being free from these states is like being free from debt. You know, when you pay off an overdraft, there's real relief, isn't there? That's what it's like when you come out of craving or aversion. Or it's like being free from disease. Or it's like being released from a prison. or it's like finding a village after you've been lost in a desert. Yeah, so that's what it's like when you're free from these mental states. And in this metaphor, of course, that I've been using, it's like discovering colour. Yeah, it's like suddenly realising that there's colour, that you don't need to live in a grey world. So the meditation, as I say, is the trip down into the basement or wherever it is and discovering colour. And it's one way of discovering that the world is technicoloured, and that the colour of the world arises in dependence on your mind. And meditation is a direct way of working on the tendencies in your mind. So those tendencies of craving and aversion that distort, even contaminate the world that we live in, originate in the mind. And meditation is a direct way of transforming those. So meditation is about transforming the mind, not particularly about having pleasant experiences. Because of course you can get into craving pleasant experiences in meditation, and again that's just craving again. Yeah. Okay, so I'll try and wrap up in a minute and then you can ask me questions. So the thing is what we do in unenlightenment. What we do in unenlightenment is fix things. We fix ourselves, don't we? We say, I'm here, this is me, and we fix the world and we say, it's out there and it's full of objects out there. And me in here wants some of those objects out there. So you can notice it when you're craving things. Like if you're thinking about something that you want, again, you're fixing it. You're saying, the world is like this, the world out there is like that, it's fixed, and it's got a thing in it, and it's like this, and I want it. What happens is then that creates a feeling of rigidity. We start to have a mind that's a bit rigid, that's a bit fixed on things, like, I want the world to be like this, or this is my opinion, I believe in this, and I'm not budging from it. Yeah, those sorts of things. So we can fix ourselves in relationship to other people. We can fix ourselves in relationship to others, can't we? We can easily get into conflict because we're unwilling to let go of our view of things. So this craving and aversion, it creates a kind of a rigid mind. And you can sort of feel it when you're in it. You can sort of feel that your mind is a bit rigid, especially if you're attached to an opinion or an idea. And then someone challenges that, and you can really feel your fixed mind then, can't you? I haven't done this for a while, but I can remember someone challenging me about Buddhism, and I was really got hot under the collar. You know, I was like trying to defend Buddhism, and I got completely caught in the trap of my own craving. You know, so yeah, craving and aversion creates a fixed mind, a fixed, rigid mind. But if you meditate, you can be content. When you're content, you don't really want anything. You don't really crave anything. You're not averse to anything. You're ready to live life on its terms. Yeah, you can accept that life has both pleasure and pain. Yeah, you're not caught up in that whole problem of trying to get pleasure and avoid pain. You just know that life has both, and you can accept that. That doesn't mean to say that you become passive and kind of wishy-washy. You can still be critical. The world still needs to be critiqued, doesn't it? We still need to, in a way, be clear about real values in the world, and that those values need to be established for a better world. You still need to know that the world can be a much, much better place. But you don't need to be attached to that. So it's the equivalent of basically knowing that there's all these paint pots to hand, and it's really, really easy to colour the world. It's really, really easy to make the world coloured. You just need to let people know how to do it. Yeah. So the Buddha, accordingly, held to no view whatsoever. So he wasn't attached to any view whatever. Yeah, but he was very, very clear about what human beings could do to free themselves from what's called the hindrances of craving and aversion. So the more enlightened your mind is, the more flexible your mind is. You're not bothered by things so much. You don't cling to ideas. You don't cling to whether you have things or not so tightly. Just don't get caught up in it. And that feeling of not getting caught up in things is really, really positive. And you can really experience contentment. That's really what contentment is. And contentment means having a flexible, vibrantly alive mind. A mind that is completely open to life, that hasn't narrowed down to what it particularly wants or what it doesn't want. It's a mind that's open to the world, can see clearly that craving and aversion are traps that cause pain, both to ourselves and others, and doesn't get caught up in them at all. So lives in a world that is fully colourful all the time. And the Buddha basically took that to the as far as it could go. Yeah, took that as far as it could go. Took contentment as far as it could go. And of course, if your mind is content, if your mind is happy and pliable and flexible, you have a mind that is much, much easily able to respond to the needs of other people and to the needs of the world. If you're caught up in your own desires, your own wishes, your own kind of wants, it's much harder to be open to others. Much, much harder because you're preoccupied with yourself. If you can free yourself from that trap, you can be much more available to genuinely be open to others. Yeah, on the basis of them, on the basis of what they need, rather than on your own on your own wishes. Yeah? So then you're in a position to basically show people that there are different colours in the world. They can live in a different sort of universe to the one that they've created out of aversion and craving. Okay? Is that clear? It's pretty clear, isn't it? Pretty clear. Okay, so that's what meditation does. It opens your mind to that, to seeing what you do with your mind. First of all, acknowledging that you act with craving and aversion, and that does have an effect in your life. And meditation allows you to see that and transform it into a real force for good, both in your own life and in the world. So I would say that's why you need to meditate. So, any questions? I mean, I know it's quite a big room, so you might feel a bit inhibited to asking, but you're welcome to ask questions if you want. I might not be able to give you answers, but let's see. Yeah.
Was meditation something that had existed before the Buddha was alive?
Yeah.
Something which he just used, or was it something that he discovered?
No, the meditation was well up and running as an activity for understanding the truth well before the Buddha. But no one had discovered it yet, if you see what I mean. In fact, in the life of the Buddha, he went to 2 meditation teachers, and they taught him how to meditate. And he tried both of the meditations that he was taught, and they got him into a very, very advanced state of consciousness indeed. But his quest for the truth was so deep that he didn't think they had taken it far enough. And in a way, going back to the metaphor, he realised actually, no, there's more colour. There is more colour ahead. You just need to keep going. And so he used meditation, and he used it further than people had done in the past, and used it to gain enlightenment. So meditation isn't a Buddhist invention at all, but the Buddha primarily used meditation as a means of understanding the mind. Yeah.
Hello. Craving and aversion are such kind of deeply ingrained habits in people's minds and how we live. And it's wonderful to kind of understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Meditation is a very broad term.
Yeah.
So whereas one person's meditation is running through the park, one person's is staring at a tree, and then others is sitting in the pose of the Buddha up there.
Yeah.
What kind of meditation are we saying is the most effective to unroot these bad habits that ultimately make us so unhappy?
Yeah, sure. No, it's a good question. I mean, there's lots of different types of meditation, of course, and I think what I'm talking about is specifically Buddhist meditation. So it is sitting in that pose or something like that, and it is directly working on your mind and working on those forces. So there are lots of meditations, and different groups and classes teach different types. The types we teach here, primarily teach, are the mindfulness of breathing, where by doing the mindfulness of breathing, you can start to see very, very clearly what happens in your mind. You can see how craving takes place, and then you can start to do something about it. And the other practice that we teach is the metta-bhavana, and the metta-bhavana is about developing loving kindness. And of course, developing loving kindness is the opposite of developing aversion. So those are 2 methods of working against the tendency of craving and aversion. But there are more advanced practices for doing that as well. And as you progress, there were other reflections that you can bring in, where you can start to reflect on the illusory nature of what we call me and mine. So we have this idea that, this is my book, and this is my body, and it's not yours. And of course, in a day-to-day sense, of course, that's true. I mean, I wouldn't want anyone to take this without asking me, because it would hurt. But you can also use it as start to question that assumption about what mine actually is. If you look at one of your possessions long enough, you can quite clearly see it's not yours at all. It never has been yours. It never will be yours. It's just this kind of not even a thing. You can start to reflect that these things that we call mine, my car, it's a complete illusion. Of course it has to work on a day-to-day level, of course. But to take it further, you start to question those beliefs. And of course, the primary belief is this is me. This shape of the universe in this little place is me. And of course, day to day, fine, no one's going to argue with that. But Buddhist meditation questions that assumption. Okay, look for that. That thing that you call me, that you're always trying to get things for and keep things away from, where is it? Where is it? Look at your experience. If you look at your experience, you notice that it's impermanent. Everything's impermanent. There isn't any fixed thing. You can't actually find, in meditation, when you look with a clear and loving mind, you can't find anything that is fixed or permanent. You can't find it. It's a complete illusion. But of course we base our lives on fixed and permanent things. And the Buddha is challenging that very, very directly. So Buddhist meditation can free you up from that whole limiting idea of a me and a world. Yeah. And if you're free from that, then when you're well and truly free from that, and it's a big job, you're enlightened. Yeah, that you'll completely come out of that whole world view that says me and mine, other. You completely free yourself from that, and it's liberating. Yeah, it's liberating and it's blissful, and it's everything that you want. It's everything that you want, but it's counterintuitive. But the Buddha, that's where Buddhist meditation leads. But it starts with awareness and kindness. Yeah, and most of us need more awareness and more kindness. Okay, yeah, I'll come back to you. Yeah.
Through trying to achieve that kind of blissful, enlightened state, as you were talking about, is there a potential road bump you might come across where, I don't know, maybe you begin craving that state in meditation, and in some kind of way you're becoming addicted to doing that? Is that? That's
definitely probable, and most people experience it. And if you want to go further, you have to deal with it. The Buddha primarily talked about the most pernicious forms of craving are those that arise in meditation for meditation experiences, and he called them views, because they're very subtle. Yeah, it's not like craving for coffee or craving for a car, which are fairly gross in terms of experience, but craving for subtle mental states is quite difficult to deal with. So you do come up against a problem. You have, especially when you first come along, you can have quite exalted states of mind where you feel like, wow, this is something, and then I don't know anyone who then doesn't want to have another experience like that. And that can take quite a long time to deal with. But you can deal with it. You realise, oh yeah, that is the same tendency in my mind. I'm just doing it with a meditation state now instead of a day-to-day state of mind. Okay, so that's a definite, not exactly a problem, but it's something that happens. So thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, so my question is really to do with what you were saying about passivity and being passive.
Yeah.
It's the fact that we have to live as lay people. We can't be ordained. It wouldn't be realistic for everyone to be a monk. So how much of ordinary life is a symptom of craving and therefore should be ideally gotten away from?
Yeah.
So what I'm thinking really is like relationships,
Yeah.
Everything you said right now, no one would have a relationship.
Yeah.
So
Well, no.
relationship unenlightened.
Yeah. No. That's not true. That's not true. Again, I think it's. Well, I mean, just to say, I'm an ordained Buddhist. I've been ordained for 9 years. I came along here in 1998. I meditate every day. I happen to live in a community upstairs, and I happen to work at the Buddhist Centre, but I wouldn't feel I have to do that to be a Buddhist. I definitely feel I'm a Buddhist. I've committed my life to trying to work with craving and aversion, and I've been in a relationship for 11 years. And I feel that's fine. They're not contradictory in an unhelpful way. At the moment in my life, I feel that that's not a contradictory thing for me to do. It might be later down the line, but at the moment I don't feel that to be the case. So, I mean, in one way you need to get away from the world, and that's what meditation is in its primary form. You come to a quiet place. And you get away from your daily life, your emails, your phones, your tasks, your jobs, all of the things you've got to do, your family, and that's what meditation in a way represents, isn't it? Lessening your input, your activity, going into yourself, and that's sort of archetypally shown to be what a monk does, because they withdraw into a monastery. And this tradition, we don't have monasteries. I'm not a monk. I wouldn't want to be a monk. I live in London. But we do hold retreats. And retreats are a way of, in a way, you could say, getting away from the world. And I think people do need to get away from the world to some extent. They do need to come out of the conditions that you're in, so that you can go deeper into your cellar, so to speak. You need to find new colours in your life. The way that we live is not the only way of living. And you can go on retreat and discover that in your consciousness there's lots and lots of other colours that you can use. But the purpose of doing that is so that you can then go back into what we call the world and live a life that has more colour in it, both for your own benefit and the benefit of others. Yeah. So this tradition, and I also value being able to get away from the world, but I also, in a way, value more being able to go back into the world. And the world needs more colour, doesn't it? Let's face it. The world needs a solution. It's not good enough at the moment. Our world is not good enough. Maybe it will never be good enough. I don't know. But the world needs more of something, and it hasn't got it at the moment. And I'm not convinced that going away from the world and staying away is a solution. But I think you can go away from the world, discover how mind affects life, and then come back into the world and have an effect in it. Like the wizard. Like the wizard came up, he always made a new colour, he always came up, he always gave it away. Yeah, and then that had a big effect. But the monastery is the equivalent of the wizard just staying in the basement, which may be fine as well. We got to finish. Sorry. Maybe one more question, then we'll yeah.
So when you were telling your story about colour, it made me think about balance, because you were saying there was too much of one colour.
Yeah.
How can meditation help you achieve the right sort of balance? You're not going too far in one colour.
Well, again, this is another talk, really. Meditation is only one method of transforming the mind. I mean, I could also have talked about friendship, about studying the Dharma, understanding the teachings, about ritual. There's lots of different ways of understanding the mind. Meditation is one primary way of doing that, but I think to be able to do it effectively, you need to do it in the context of a community where you've got friends, other people are doing it as well, and that then provides a natural balance between what sort of colours you're using, if you see what I mean. So, because I'm just talking about meditation, I've emphasised that, but the actual path of living a spiritual life is not just meditation, it's meditation, friendship, community, study, going on retreat. It's all sorts of things you need to be able to discover that you're not only painting the world blue. Okay, we better finish. So thank you very much. Thank you very much.